Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Letting everybody sign in. Alrighty. Okay. Call this roll one last time for this semester. Tavia Hawk. I'm sorry, no. Let's start off in the A's. Let's see. Jamari Adams. Nadia Bell. Samaya Blunt.
Here.
All right, got you. Tierra Brady. All right. Antonio Brown. DeAndre Burgess.
Here.
Got you. Jameis Burns. No Burns. Hold up. Somebody hit me in the chat. Okay. All right. Burns. Ebony Chavis. No Ebony Chavis. Jada Ellerby. Charnay Ewing.
Here.
All right. Abby Feith. Nope. Okay. Alexis Fields. Thought I saw you earlier. Yeah. Alexis, that you are here, right?
Yes.
Okay. Brandon Foster.
I'm here.
All right. Jalen Good.
I'm here.
All right. Sydney Graham. Sydney with a C. Nope. Okay. Tavia Hawley. Nope. Kiswana Houston. Kiera Jefferson. Aaliyah Johnson.
Here.
All right. Robert Jordan. I got him. Still got bad connection, Robert? All right. Okay. Sierra Knox.
Here.
All right. Kevney Lomax.
Here.
Elisa Maldonado. All right. Sincere Mays. Sincere Mays. Okay. Daniel McDaniel. I'm sorry, Nasir McDaniel Moore.
Here.
All right, got you. Brandon Merritt.
Here.
All right. Terry Miles. Terry Miles. Mary Monroe.
Here.
Okay. Aaliyah Moore.
Here.
Got you. Ariel Moore.
I'm here.
All right. Daniel Moore. Daniel Moore. Okay. Aaron Orr.
I'm here.
Got you. Ramia Parker.
I'm here.
All right. Asia Pinnick. Asia Pinnick. Kiera Porter. Raven Rayner. Okay. Gabrielle Rodriguez.
Here.
Quadasia Sharp.
I'm here. I sent you a message in the chat, Professor Boyce.
Yeah, I saw that. You're currently in the car. So I got you.
Okay, thank you.
Tamara Sheely. Sheely.
I'm here. I'm
Okay.
here.
Ariel Sherrod.
Here.
Simone Tunstall.
Here.
All right. Jeremy Vick. Jeremy Vick. Kerry Watkins. Kerry Watkins. Talika Yates.
Here.
And Alana Maddox. Alana Young Maddox.
I'm here.
Got you. All right. This is the final time we meet for this semester. So we're going to talk about a few things. Not going to be on here too long. I guess it just depends on what questions we all have. So let's see here. Okay, last week's assignment was the outside the book, and I gave you the lecture on that, and the cumulative course review and final exam review. So let's talk about outside the book. Did y'all? I had the PDF. I PDF'd the material to you guys. That would have been. It was a chapter that actually came out of an old the textbook we used to use for this class before. Actually, we used it. The last time using that textbook would have been last spring, right before we broke out for COVID. So the new textbook we have, I like it. I like it more, but it's just one chapter I feel like that it did not have that the old book had, and that was just a chapter about courts and the media. Because we're going to learn about courts and the judicial process. We need to know the role that the media plays in the court process, and just the history of the media in courts. So of course, the media has always been involved because we've always had some type of news, whether it be by mouth or whether back in the day we, had the newspaper, which a lot of people don't even take the newspaper anymore. They just, log in online and they have an online subscription. So print media is slowly but surely going by the wayside. But you had newspaper back in the day, and then of course you had radio, where you had people to tell you what happened, what was happening on the radio, and then we moved to television. Of course, there are a lot of famous cases. So the O.J. Simpson case, you hear me talk about it all the time, but it is not, it's not. It was the most famous case at that point in time, but before that, it was not. I would say it wasn't the most famous case. You got, let me see, probably the first famous trial that America looked at, what probably would have been, would have been pre-TV. This would have been more around the time of radio. But the Charles Lindbergh murder case. That's where the child of Charles Lindbergh, and he was like an American, a world hero because he flew a plane across the Atlantic Ocean, and he was, probably one of the greatest pilots of all time, and just an American hero. Everyone knew him, so of course, made a lot of money and had some fame, and of course, he had a baby. Him and his wife had a child, and that child was kidnapped and held for ransom. Of course, this panic. They eventually found someone that they could connect to the what they said was connected to the kidnapping, because they when they gave them the ransom money, it was specially marked. There were specially marked bills. So they essentially caught this guy using the bills or spending the bills, and they connected it. So they tried to connect the kidnap and eventual what was deemed to be a murder, because they found the body of the baby. They connected it to this guy, Bruno Richard Haltman. So in that trial, that ended up being the trial of the century. He was found at that time. It was a trial of the century. He was found guilty and executed. But that was just an example of the media being involved in the court system, and how sometimes the media, even though we all want information, we want to know what's going on. Sometimes it can backfire, because you also have to pick jurors from this same pool of people who now have access to all this information. So in the court system, of course, the jury is only supposed to make decisions of guilt or innocence based upon Miss Knox. Let's see. Okay, based upon the evidence that's presented in court and nothing else. So only the testimony that's presented in court and the spoken evidence, or when I say spoken evidence, that means testimony, and physical evidence is actually admitted into the trial. That is the only thing that a jury is supposed to absorb and use to make their decision. So the danger that comes into play with the media is, especially now, because the media now is different than the way it used to be. And most of you guys are pretty young, so y'all don't necessarily remember the days of Dan Rather and Ted Koppel. And even before that, before my time, there was Walter Cronkite. But you had the evening news, and it was delivered by the guy with a strong voice, but he had the most boring personality ever. But he just gave it straight. These days, media, they all put a spin on things, and everyone wants to be an expert, and everyone wants to be a talking head or be a pundit. So what we get in the media these days is much different than even what we got when I was coming up in the 80s. So you can imagine as a jury and as a potential juror in the jury pool, just cutting on the TV every day or cutting on the radio, you were going to hear about the case. So it was then incumbent upon you as a juror to now be able to make a decision in that case, a decision of guilt or innocence, and not think about anything you heard outside the courtroom. That's what we ask jurors to do all the time, especially in these popular cases. So fast forward about, I would say 80, not when it wasn't quite, it was, I would say 60 years or so, 60 to 70 years later, then we have the O.J. Simpson trial, and that happens happens right there in the spring of I'm trying to remember what year it was. I want to say it was like 93 or 94 when that happened. A lot of you guys weren't even around, but I was like in eighth grade. But I want to say baseball season was in full effect. They were playing the Masters, and all of a sudden the everything that's on TV is interrupted because they have breaking news that O.J. Simpson is now in a low speed chase going down the I-10 freeway in Los Angeles, California, running from the police. So we all see this. We all see this white Bronco with two black men in the car. You see AC Callens driving the car, and you see the silhouette of OJ in the back seat, and he apparently has a gun to his head. He's suicidal. And the cops, of course, following him at low speed. So this whole chase, I don't think they drove any faster than like 45 miles per hour tops. But he ends up, essentially driving to, getting stopped. He, drives to his house, tries to get out of the car. There's a little bit of a standoff, and they get him to the ground and get him arrested. Then he is at that point charged with the double murder of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. So that starts the whole circus. So from the very beginning, I think his wife had died a few weeks before. There was like investigation. And of course, eventually then they looked at OJ as being the target of the investigation. And of course, they arrested him. And that's how they arrested him. But at that point, now OJ has taken over TV. He took over TV at that point, to the point where even his preliminary hearings, not even the trial itself, but the preliminary hearings, his first appearance, they were literally interrupting my grandmama's stories. I know y'all know about the stories, right? The soap operas. But they were interrupting the soap operas so that we could watch this O.J. Simpson stuff. So that's the first kind of I know y'all talk about stuff that breaks the internet. The O.J. Simpson case almost broke TV, kind of. Literally, you couldn't turn to any station and it wasn't on. And it kind of gave way. It was kind of the precursor to court TV, or if court TV was already around, it definitely kind of made court TV more relevant. Because now you have a whole TV channel and they focus on court. So whatever court case is going on, there's something on all the time that's about court. So, of course, that was an example of the media being involved in the court. So what was the media going to be in the trial? And, of course, you have a lot of cases where the media is not allowed in the courtroom, or they're allowed in the courtroom, but there are no cameras. So you then hear reporters that have to come out and kind of tell us, not quite verbatim, but tell us what happened in court today. And what was different was in the O.J. Simpson trial, they allowed the cameras in court, and it was a fully televised trial. So you got to hear all the parts of the trial. You got to hear the opening statements. You got to hear the state's case in chief, the defense case in chief. And you got to hear all the motions and the closing arguments. And even before that, you even got to see the preliminary hearings when they had certain hearings about certain things and whether or not these things would be admitted into evidence, and certain constitutional arguments and stuff like that. So you got to see everything. Everything was televised, so it was real crazy how we watched that. That's actually around the time when I decided I want to be a lawyer. Especially Johnny Cochran's my favorite lawyer, but my hero, when he says, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. At that point, I was like, wow, that's what I want to do. That's cool. He came up with, he's like a rapper. He got 16 bars. So I want to be like that when I grow up. So that's what kind of led me even into the profession I'm in. There was other things as well. But that's just an example of how the media works in the court system. The media, of course, is supposed to report back to everyone that's not in court. But these days it's different because there's always a spin, like, even with the election and stuff like that, you got, what you can rely on from each news station. Each news junket or station has their own spin on things. So it's kind of weird. It is different these days. So of course, it's also about the litigation explosion as well. Of course, America as a society, because the court system is essentially designed to allow us to have a means in which we can settle disputes. Now you have, as time kind of went on, of course, as people had more and more access to the court system, people started suing each other. to the point. That's why we call ourselves a litigious society, because now, someone steps on your shoe and messes up your brand new stilettos. Now you're going to sue them. If you don't fight them, you're going to sue them. So everyone's filing lawsuits, a slip and fall. Everyone's trying to come up. So it's turned us into a litigious society, especially when you have a lot of stuff that's what I would call not civilly legal things that a person could sue for or get damages for. Now you have everyone wants some money. Every car accident you see, a little bang up, now there's always some type of claim, personal injury claim or something like that. And that's just how society is. We're very litigious. Probably can't think of another society where people sue each other as much as they do in America. But of course, those two things are connected, because media kind of drives what we do in society, and vice versa. Then society drives what the media puts out there, because they're only going to put out there what the people have a hunger for, right? So that is chapter. That is what I call the OTB, the outside the book lecture, kind of in a nutshell. I gave a full lecture, of course. This is just me going back over and talking. Are there any questions about that chapter of the book?
No.
Okay, what was my lecture that I provided, was it clear? Did everyone understand it? Was it cool? I didn't talk real crazy, did I? Aaron Orr's giving me the thumbs up, so it must have been good.
You were good.
I think Aaron Orr and Aaliyah Johnson would tell me if it was terrible, so they said it was good, so it must be all right.
You're definitely right. We would tell you.
There you go. Yeah, y'all would tell me, or y'all would tell somebody else. I'd be like, boys ain't good. Boys don't know what he's talking about. Y'all would tell somebody, but y'all didn't, so it must be straight. So that is the outside the book lecture. Now we're going to talk about the cumulative course review. I'm going to kind of talk about the course as a whole. Of course, we started out. Of course, this is not what I call a paper class or this is not an essay writing class, so I don't grade you guys in writing. So there was no writing workshop. I know some of you do I have anyone in here who is in one of my writing classes? Anyone in my procedure? Okay, Aaron. I see Aaron Orr about every night of the week. What you got me for 3 classes? Don't you like 3 or 4 classes? Like all my classes?
I just have you for these 2.
Which one? This one and which one? And criminal law.
Criminal law.
Yeah. Okay. Make sure you take criminal procedure next semester. Don't run from me. Don't you run from me. She's making that. Don't you run from me, Aaron Orr. Don't be scared of writing. I'm just trying to get y'all right. But so in this class, we just went chapter by chapter. Of course, the only way I could really test you in this class and test your knowledge and whether or not you were studying was just through multiple choice questions. This was not a substantive class, meaning I was not teaching substantive law. I was not teaching law. I was just teaching you guys. This is kind of the how-to, or the or what I call it, the who does what in the court system, how the court system works, and then whose job is it to do what, and kind of the history of the court system. So we didn't really go into a lot of law. Now, the only law we probably talked about throughout the whole thing was the Constitution of the United States itself, because the Constitution created government and it created our court system. So I had to give you a history of how the court system was created, what we call Article 3. So, of course, when I say court system, I mean federal court system, because there was actually, you had the different colonies, which were, at the time they were colonies, but they became states once we decided how we wanted to organize ourselves as a country. But of course, each colony had its own little rules and their governance and their own court system. And most of them were a lot alike. They didn't differ very much, but some different in what they call things, right? But then, of course, once we're all joined together and we become a United States of America, there's a reason we're the United States of America. America is just the landmass, right? Where America is the country. It's all this big, I guess, part of North America that's sectioned off from right below Canada and right above Mexico, and then Alaska and Hawaii. But what America is made up of is 50 sovereign states. These are 50 sovereign territories that have now joined together, kind of like a corporate partnership. Actually, each state is a corporation. So they've joined together in a corporate partnership, and they said, we're going to join together and we're going to have this one country. We're going to agree to these federal rules that that govern the United States federal government, and we're going to join it. Now, once we're within our states, we have our rights as states to do what we want to do within our states, as long as it isn't something that's a federal question. So that's when we start talking about jurisdiction. So we start talking about Chapter 1. In Chapter 1, there was the what we call law and the judicial function. Where we talked a little bit about jurisdiction, and then Chapter 2, we talked about sources of law. Where does law come from? Whether it be the Constitution itself, whether it be case law, where the Constitution now has to be interpreted by a court, what we call an appeals court, a court of appeals, whether it be on the state level. Because of course you have the 3 levels of court. You have your, like your low-level trial court, usually dealing with misdemeanors and things lower than that. Then, of course, in most jurisdictions, you have your court that's a step higher. It's still a trial court, but they're dealing with things that are a little bit more serious, your felonies and stuff like that. And on the civil side, they're dealing with lawsuits that usually have an increased amount in controversy. Then from there, of course, after you have these trials, and of course, each party or parties in these cases may be able to appeal to a higher court. Once they appeal, that next level of courts is what we call appeals courts, or state appeals courts. From there, you have the highest court in the state, which is now they're called different things, but I'll call them just in general the Supreme Court of that state. And the United States as a federal jurisdiction, it works a lot the same. You have your low-level courts, your trial courts. Then from there, you appeal your trial rulings, and you go up to the Court of Appeals. And of course, the book talks about how the country is separated into the different what we call judicial districts, or circuits, as they call them. And of course, depending on what circuit you're in, when you appeal, you're in the federal court, your appeal is going to go to that circuit, to the appeals court of that circuit. Then from there, if the Supreme Court chooses fit, the United States Supreme Court can grant what we call a writ of certiorari and decide to hear the case, and they'll take the case. But of course, they don't hear a lot of stuff. They only hear important stuff. So it definitely has to be a matter of federal law or the Constitution. So if it's something that's coming out of a state, for a state case to reach to the federal or United States Supreme Court, it must be a matter of constitutional importance. So that means the state that in that court, in that trial, they must be determining a matter, or once a conflict must be an important constitutional matter. Because the federal government doesn't step in when it's just a states' right situation or a state law situation, unless someone's saying that state law has now violated their federal constitutional rights. So all that comes into play. Then we talked about the types of law. We talked about civil, criminal, and everything. So we talked about the 2 sides. And I think there's some other stuff we talked about as well. Then in Chapter 4, we talked about the court organization and structure, how everything's like a pyramid, a hierarchy. From the bottom, you have more courts, and then they work their way up to the middle. Then you appeal to the top. How that hierarchy works on the state level and the federal level, and how even on the state side, depending on what the state case is, that the state case can go all the way up to the top of the federal level, to the United States Supreme Court. Then we started to talk about the courtroom actors, the people who work in the court system, the people who make things happen and make things move. We first talked about prosecutors. We talked about something called prosecutorial discretion and screening, essentially how they prioritize cases and decide what they're going to prosecute and what they're not going to prosecute. We talked about how prosecutors are elected, or how they're selected, how they decide what they're going to prosecute and what goes into that, how they organize their office. So I want you to understand that in the court system, all these offices, all these players in the court system, they're essentially a group they're managing people to help move stuff through the court system. So, you can't, even though you may have one prosecutor that's the chief and making the decisions, that person has to have people under them. They have to delegate. They have to organize an office and make it work. Because the court system, the number one thing the court system does is it essentially what do I call it? It herds people through a system. So whether it be the civil side or the criminal side, and there are usually way more people on the criminal side than the civil side. But there are a lot of people coming through the courthouse. Like even through this COVID situation, the courthouse, it probably shut down for about a good 3 months, probably from right there at the beginning of March or mid-March to it's like 2.5 months to the end of May. So it started back in June. So the whole thing was figuring out this place is always probably the most public place in any county, especially in Greensboro. The courthouse is the most public place, and the reason it's the most public place is because the people that are there a lot of times aren't there because they want to be. They have to be, or they'll get arrested, right? Now, the mall is a public place, but you can always choose not to go to the mall. You can choose not to go to McDonald's. But when you're charged with the crime and they say be your behind in court, you might want to be there, right? Unless you're told not to be, But for the most part, you're forced to be there. Either you come to court or we're going to come take your freedom. So most people will choose to come to court. So it's the one place that a lot of people go, and most of the people there have to be there for one reason or the other. So that's what I call it, the most public place that we essentially force people to be at. Even with jury duty, you're calling people from the outside and now have to come in and be jurors, and they can't just skip out on jury duty. They have to have an excuse, or they could get in trouble, right? So most of the people in the courthouse aren't there because they want to be. They're there because they're told to be. And then the other people in the courthouse are just the actors, and those are the people that are paid to be there. So I'll go to court because I'm crazy and I get paid for cases. So, I'm putting a mask on my face and I'm risking COVID every day because I got to make this money. I have a business to run. So, I have duties to the courthouse. I'm on court appointed list, but so I'm out here grinding. So I'll go to the courthouse. But for the rest of the people who aren't licensed attorneys and don't have a financial interest in the courthouse, they're pretty much there because they were told to be there or we'll come arrest you. So that's why they're there. So it makes it's a very public place, but the working group of the courthouse is what moves people and cases through. So people, their cases and people are always attached to these cases. So if we're moving cases out and we're disposing of cases, we're also pushing people out. Because the thing is, the people are usually welcomed into the court system through the police, through law enforcement. So a large percentage of cases that come through the courthouse because law enforcement is out there arresting people. They're out there doing their job, right? There's another percentage of people that are in the courthouse because, as a private citizen, you also have the right to go to the magistrate's office and file a charge or take out a charge against someone else. So you have people that are also there because other people, not law enforcement, have gone and filed charges against this person. So now they got to come to court. So that's how you get into the court system. So it's all about people. It's all about cases. If we can move cases out, we'll never get rid of cases because cops ain't going to stop working and people are never going to just get along. So there's always going to be a reason for someone want to take charges out or something like that. So really, if we wouldn't have open court back up, it just would have created more of a backlog because I can guarantee you the cops weren't going to stop working. So because the cops weren't going to stop working, cases had to be moved out. Things had to be done so that we can make room for everything else that's coming. Then we moved on to chapter 6, where we talked about my job. We talked about defense attorneys and what their obligations are to their clients. Then from there, we moved on to judges, which is very, very important because the judges preside over the courtrooms. They are essentially make sure the cases get moved in and out of the court system. Sometimes judges are even asked to be the jury, to be the trier of fact and have to, determine guilt or innocence, depending on what type of courtroom it is. So you have, they're part of the selection process. As a matter of fact, when a person gets arrested, it's either a judicial official, a judge, or a magistrate that now gets to determine their bond. So the judges are involved in every important phase, even in the beginning phases of the court system. It's not just in the trial or in the courtroom. It's even before that. Then we talked about, that was chapter 7, judges. Then we moved to chapter 8, where we talked about defendants and victims. So, in the criminal court system, you have defendants and the people that the defendants allegedly hurt, right? So we had to talk about both sides. Well, of course, when we talk about the Constitution protects the rights of the defendant. Because you got to think, as a defendant in the court system, it's you versus a system. So it's you versus literally a whole entire system, the DA's office, law enforcement. It's a huge group of people, and you have the weight of the system bearing down on you. So the Constitution now protects you from the greater weight and strength of the system. It allows you to also be strong because it protects your rights. Now, for a victim, because the alleged victim in the case, they have essentially the system working on their side. There are not any constitutional rights for victims. Now, there can sometimes be statutory or rules that are created to protect victims, but none of them are in the United States Constitution, and most state constitutions don't have victims' rights. So normally that comes in because they decided, well, we want to give victims the right to be heard, so we're gonna have an act or an act of Congress or a local ordinance or something like that. So so victims are not constitutionally protected. Do they have rights? Yes, in some situations they have rights, but their rights are not created in the Constitution. They're usually created in local rules or maybe state statutes or something like that. Let me see. Then we move from chapter 8 to chapter 9. We talked about the jury selection process, how that process goes, what the jury has been asked to do, the history of the jury, where it comes from. Then from there, of course, we had discussion board as our second discussion board. Then we moved on to chapter 10, pretrial procedures. What do we do pretrial? Chapter 11, the criminal trial, how the trial goes. So I walked you step by step through the trial process. Chapter 12, we talked about at the end of a trial, either you win or lose. If you win, you go home. If you lose, now we got to talk about what's going to happen to you. So that we talked about sentencing. That was chapter 12. We talked about what we call structured sentencing, and how structured sentencing was designed to make sure that a person is sentenced fairly and not based upon anything other than two variables: who they are on paper, in other words, what their criminal record is, and then the classification of the crime itself. So when I say classification, of course, crimes are classified and ranked on a hierarchy of least serious up to the most serious. So there are two variables: the crime itself and how serious it was, or how it classifies, and what the record level or what the criminal record level is of the defendant. So there's a sheet of paper. I think I showed it. I talked about it in the lecture. And there's an intersection where the classification of the crime and however this person lands or grades out, depending on their criminal record, where they meet, and that's going to be that's going to be the range in which they're going to be sentenced or punished in. Then from there, we talked about the appellate process in chapter 13. Then chapter 14, we talked about specialized courts like drug court. Then you have like teen courts, where it's designed to allow, people of a certain age, young people to be able to not adjudicate where it's binding, but at least talk about the action. Sometimes when, especially when you're young, most of you guys are young, so y'all weren't in high school too long ago. But imagine your teenage self, and back when your teenage self was doing dumb stuff. Sometimes teenagers only listen to teenagers. Your daddy can tell you something stupid every day. You're like, oh, don't care what daddy say, but let your friends say, man, that's stupid. You're like, dang, that's stupid. So teen court is all about, because at a certain age, kids are impressionable. It's designed to make it where other kids can talk about and give guidance on the actions of other kids. So you should have done this, so you should have done that. And sometimes they can give out sanctions, like doing community service or something like that. They're not putting people in jail, but that's what teen courts are for. I said drug courts. You have mental health courts, where it's essentially like a probationary court, where they're keeping track of people that may be a danger to, not really a danger, but let's say they're a problem because their mental health keeps bringing them back to court because they're getting in trouble, and really that could have all been that could have all been avoided if this person was just on their medication and taking their medication the right way. So we talked about that. They also have veterans courts or military courts as well, where veterans that may need guidance and kind of reacclimating themselves to life, they have special courts for them as well. Then from there, we moved outside the book, where we talked about tonight, courts, media, and the litigation explosion. So that was the whole semester in a nutshell. Now, our final exam, it will be, it's 45 multiple choice questions. 45 multiple choice questions, and there is an additional extra credit question that's worth 5 points. So you can come out of this exam making 45 out of 50. Excuse me. Let me see. Yeah, so you can come out of this exam making, with extra credit, making 50 out of 45 points. So you can actually come out with 5 extra points. Of course, throughout the semester, I gave everyone opportunities to just show up for functions. Of course, we didn't have to physically be there. Everything was a Zoom, right? So I gave people the opportunity to earn points by just showing up places. And jumping on these Zooms. There was a departmental meeting, the opening meeting, and then we had I had an event that I was asked to speak on, to be a panelist on, regarding policing, and then we had our own departmental Zoom once again, where we talked about the Breonna Taylor case. So that was at least 3 opportunities to get extra credit. So I'm not giving an extra credit assignment. I gave you guys 3 chances. All you gotta do is log in and do what most of you do. Just put your name up there, send me a message, and do what you're doing. Go back to the PS4. You ain't had a PS5 back then. So literally, it's an easy way to get 5 points. So that is the final. Of course, it's all multiple choice questions. What I will tell you is you're probably going to recognize a lot of the questions, specifically the first 30 questions, because they may be the same questions. Remember, you had 2 quizzes, right? The first quiz was 15 points, and the second quiz was 15 points, right? If I put those 2 15-point quizzes together, that's 30 points, right? That's 30 questions. And then if I add another new, fresh 15 questions to that, what's that? 45 questions. How many questions does your final exam have? Aha. So that may be what the final exam consists of. That would make your final exam officially a cumulative exam. It covers the entire semester. So I'll just leave that out there. So like I said, course study all the chapters, but if you did well on the on both of the quizzes, you should fare well on the final, because you've already done the first 30 questions. So you should remember those, remember what your answer choices were. So definitely also focus on these the last third of the semester. That would be, let me see, that would be essentially chapters. Let me see. Let me see what quiz 2 is. Yeah, quiz 2 was chapters 7 through 12. So that means I'll tell you, the last 15 questions on this final exam are going to be 13, 14, and the outside the book. So that's essentially what you have to worry about. Just that those the last 5 questions are going to be on that. The last 15 questions are going to be on that subject matter. So if you can remember, if you felt like the first 2 quizzes well, you knew what I was asking you, for the final, all you really need to focus on is chapter 13, chapter 14, those last 2 chapters in the textbook, and then also focus on the outside the book lecture, because I will be testing on that. So you may want to read that PDF I gave you, that printout as well, and look at my lecture. So that is pretty much it. Nothing else to be graded in this class. I'm going to go through. So I want to tell you where to find your grades and how it's going to be done. So your actual letter grade is not going to be in Blackboard. So Blackboard may give you a grade based upon the total amount of points you're allowed to submit. I've allotted for you over under divided by the points you actually earn. So they may give you a grade, but you don't have a grade in Blackboard. Blackboard, I use Blackboard just for scoring. So if you want to know what your score is, that's where you look to Blackboard to know what your score is. In the syllabus, I gave you guys the grading scale, right? We're on a plus minus grading scale. If you can get your score and you know what that number is, whatever that score is, and then look at the plus minus grading scale that's provided in the syllabus, that's the official university plus minus grading scale. Whatever score you have, wherever it lands on that, that's your grade. You're usually not gonna, you're never gonna get less than the grade the score you earned. So if you earned if you earned a 92, that 92 technically is an A minus, right? I'm not going to give you a B plus. I'm going to give you at least what you earn because that's what your score is. Now, sometimes I personally may curve things depending on how most of the class scores or if everyone kind of needs help or needs a bump. Sometimes that 92 might now be an A depending on how everyone else scored, or actually how you perform. So if you got a 92, but you were at an active student, you had perfect attendance and you were at everything and I can tell you, if we were in person, you probably would have been involved. But if you were a good student, that's the type of person I'll throw a bonus to you. I'm not going to give you an A minus. I'm going to give you an A. So you're not going to ever get less than what you deserve. Sometimes you get blessed and you might get more. So that's where not being a sucky student comes in at the end. You see how it can come back to hurt you or haunt you. So that's how the grading is done. So you only use Blackboard to tally your score, to see what your score is. Your actual grade will be in Aggie Access. That's at the official grading place for the university. So when I put your grades in, I'm going to put them in Aggie Access. So if you want to know what your grade is, go to Aggie Access. Now, today's the 17th. The final exam, guess when it's going to be up? Tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. The final exam is up. It'll be up until November 24th, right there before Thanksgiving. And then it'll come down and I'll put it back up if need be during the exam period. So most of you guys, if you're going home for Thanksgiving, of course, the semester, we're going to kick y'all off campus at Thanksgiving, right? When you go home for Thanksgiving, don't come back till January. So because of that, why on earth in a class where all I'm asking you to do is 45 multiple choice questions? I gave you the first 30, told you where those came from. You've already seen them. Why on earth would you wait to December to do it? Now you have a right to that because the university says you have, if that's the actual exam time. But I'm giving those who want to get this thing over with the opportunity, and that should be all of you guys, the opportunity to go ahead and jump in before the exam period, before December, to go ahead and jump in and do the final now. It'll be up tomorrow morning. That is the 18th. It'll be up at I think I have it on the syllabus. It says 8 a.m. But I think I timed it where it'll be up at 7 a.m. So it'll be a whole hour earlier. It'll be up tomorrow at 7. You can take it. Now, once you jump in and take it, you can't log out and then log back in and go question by question. You have to. It has to be taken in one sitting. So once you decide to have the time to take it, make sure your computer's charged up. I don't want no technical difficulties. Plug your computer into the wall. Make sure your internet's straight. Make sure you're connected. Look at the little internet thing on the bottom corner of your computer. Make sure you're straight. Choose a good internet search engine, like I would say Google Chrome or Firefox. We all have preferences. I use Google Chrome, but and log in to Blackboard and start taking your exam. Once you click begin, you got to finish it in one sitting. Now, if something does happen, because there's always some type of technical difficulty, if something does happen, all of you guys have my mobile phone number in the syllabus. You can reach me by texting me at that number and saying, Professor Boyce, My name is so-and-so from this class. Now, I teach about 100 students this semester, right? So you can't just be like, oh, this Johnny. I don't know who Johnny is. Johnny who? From what class? Tell me what class. And say, I had a technical difficulty. I got kicked out of the exam for whatever reason. Can you please reset it? And all I have to do, now give me time to get the message as well, okay? So especially if it's over the weekend, I'll look at my phone, like I'll get to it, or I may see it and want to help you, but I may not be near my laptop. So give me time to get to it. I'll text you back and say, hey, it's done. I'll go in, and all I have to do is clear your attempt, and it resets it. You start back over. So that's how the process goes. So you can take your exam anywhere from tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. all the way through the 24th at 11:59 p.m. The 24th is what day of the week? I want to say that is next Monday, if I'm not mistaken. Hold up. Oh, it's next Tuesday. So it's 7 days. Was that 7 days? Today's the 17th. I keep making the day the 18th. Today's the 17th. So it's gonna be up to next Tuesday at 11:59. So essentially, what you have once it comes up tomorrow, you have pretty much 6 days to take it. So it's gonna be up tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. and it's gonna be up until next Tuesday evening at 11:59 p.m. So you have that window of time to take the exam. I'm telling you now, try to take it during that time. Now will I be mad if you don't? Yes, I will, but I can't really chew you out. I can chew you out. I might chew you out, but I definitely can't penalize you because the university allots an exam time anyway. So I would just have to open it back up during that exam time. But if I open it up during that exam time, it's only going to be open during that exam window. So if we were physically together having to take an exam, they would only give us like a 3-hour block. So literally that means you got to log on at this time, and I'm only going to allow it to be open at that time. So not taking the exam during this time means you're going to be in a tighter window, and I'm not going to make it easier than I would make it now. And I'm not even going to make it as easy as I'm making it now, where you got a whole week to take the exam. So if you're going to choose to do it during the exam period, you got that day during that window of time to take it. So go ahead. That's incentivizing you guys to go ahead and jump in and get this thing done. Any questions before we log out for the last time this semester? Okay, no questions. Erin turned the video on, so I see she paying attention. But so that's it. So of course, I don't know if you guys heard the news, but the chair of our department, or he was the interim chair, Dr. George Johnson, passed away yesterday morning. I don't know if everyone found it out or knows, but I don't know if they sent them. I know they sent the email to us as faculty, but I don't know if the students got it yet. But he did pass away. So I guess we're trying to figure out what to do as a department to honor him. So we'll be doing something soon. But just keep all of us in your hearts and prayers. And of course, I don't know how because he was relatively new, been here a few years. I don't know what direct relationships you guys as students have with him, but we have to keep each other in prayer. If you're praying in person, I can't make you pray, but if you're praying person or meditating person, whatever you do that for us as a department. Do it, and we'll do it for you. So just keep us all in your thoughts. So if there's nothing else to be said, I will say it was a joy to teach you guys this semester. And my parting shot, what I will say, leaving out, and I said it last night, so Erin Orr was there, she remembers. Make sure, so the way we're learning right now, this virtual thing, it doesn't look like the COVID solution is coming right away. So next semester, possibly even the semester out after that, you need to look forward to the possibility of you having virtual classes. It's weird for me. I'm used to teaching and being in front of you guys. There's a certain energy about being in front of students in the class. It's easier. I can tell when you don't get something. I can say, hey, you got a question, but it's different now. But you guys need to go ahead and get used to this being the way you learn. So some of you might have in-person classes here or there, but for the most part, this is it. Because most of us professors I ain't want that Rona, so I'll do all my classes virtually. So this is how it's going to be. I know a lot of you may not be used to it. A lot of you may not even like it. Some of you love it. But you have to get it, whether you like it or love it. This is how it's going to be. It's not changing. We love you. You're all special as individuals, but none of you is special enough that we're going to change the way we got to teach this thing. This is how it is. So what you have to do is become accustomed to now having to motivate yourself to do things. Stay on top of yourself, schedule things, have your syllabi printed out so that you know what's due. Because there's no way anyone in this class this semester can say we ever did anything outside of that schedule on the syllabus. We did everything by the syllabus. So it's important that you keep yourself on track. So now it's not, you don't have professors in your face every day. You don't see me in the hallways walking by saying, did you do this? You know this is due tomorrow. You're not getting these in-person reminders. So you have to stay on top of yourself. And now time management, self-time management is very important now. So it is different because as professors, we were I know I've been a little bit easier because we got the Rona out there and it kind of gives you guys a built-in excuse. But y'all are not the only ones that are having problems with this Rona being out here, right? It's crazy for all of us. So I don't want you to think you're insular in your suffering. We're all worried about what's going to happen in the future. We all got the same president. We were in the same election. We don't know what's going on. It's crazy. We all had to deal with that. So I know you were students and I was a teacher, but guess what? I dealt with it like you did. So we don't want to use anything as an excuse for us to be less than what we are capable of being. So we still need to do our work, and we still need to stay on top of things. So for next semester, no matter whether you take my classes or not, you're probably going to be taking online classes. What I'll tell you is tighten up. There are a lot of students in here that I remember I've had before, and I was surprised. I'm kind of like, wow, they're usually a better student than that. I know that this whole online thing is affecting them. Next semester, it is what it is. You know what's coming. It's going to be online. Stay on top of these things, okay? So I can promise you, if you got my classes next semester, I was easy this semester because I was kind of the first time. But next semester, it ain't going to be that way. If you're wilding and you don't do something on time, I'm not giving reminders, and you're going to take the L you take on it, okay? So just remember that. Tighten up. Let this be a learning experience, and y'all be good. Aggie Pride.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you for saying bye, Aaron. I guess I made everybody else mad. It was like, boy,
No.
shoot us
Bye.
out.
Thank you. This is
You're not
a
even
good
saying
class.
bye no more. Nah, I love y'all. Y'all be good.
Thank you.
See you next semester because I do have you for one of my classes.
Okay, I look forward to it.
All right, see you
Aaliyah, are
soon.
you still around next semester? Aaliyah, are you still there? Nope, maybe not. Okay, well, y'all be good.